So guys, we're here with ferrets. How you been, ferrets?
Uh, I hate my job. My life is a lie, and my model requires reworks.
Right, but on the bright side, you now have the Gulf of America. Congratulations.
Yes, and we're finally getting snow.
Yeah, well, congratulations on the snow.
I guess. I mean,
Yeah, we don't get. I don't get really get snow where I am here in Australia. So yeah, for me to get snow or for me to have snow, I have to travel. But let's jump into it because Elon Musk has called video games journalism garbage.
so are they like recyclable garbage or just like a garbage that you toss in the bin and forget about?
I think at this point the garbage you toss in the bin and forget about. I don't even think you could actually recycle them into something good.
Hmm.
I think it's literally it's like that old plastics where at the end of the day you just no matter what you can't reuse it. It's just it's past its use by date. It just needs to be tossed out, and you can't make it anything useful. But as you can imagine, the media industry or the games media industry has had a meltdown over him calling them garbage. Um, they're not happy about it. Here's Elon's tweet here, where he basically just turned around and said that video journalism is garbage. And of course, I responded to it. A whole bunch of the indie guys have gone through and have responded to it. But the mainstream media has also gone through and responded to. But before we get to them, let's go through and cover. So, video games journalism is garbage. He said simply that one short statement was enough to send the usual suspects into a games media into a full meltdown. Kotaku reporter Ethan Gretsch tried to downplay Musk's criticism. They ruined my toys is the sophistication level of this omnibus driving the current regulatory takeover, he says condescendingly. Um, and now obviously someone's responded with, I know the Kotaku guy isn't taking RN. Isn't the guy ain't talking RN. I know the Kotaku guy isn't talking right now. I don't know. Unsurprisingly, gamers weren't having it. Gash was relentlessly mocked with the users pointing out the hypocrisy of game journalists who claim to love the industry while constantly berating its audiences. Former Kotaku senior editor Alyssa McCunty also claimed that she was sarcastic. Also chimed in with some sarcasm, saying someone is angry, sick, proving once again that many in the gaming press would rather sneer and criticize than engage with it. Would rather sneer at criticism than engage with it. But let's be honest, Musk is right. The backlash from these so-called game journalists only proves the point. And we do actually have some evidence to actually back this up as well. Video games journalists weren't always this bad. This is the time the outlets actually focused on reviewing games, providing guides, and reporting on industry development without injecting politics into every headline. Then Gamergate happened. The 2004 movement, which began as a call for ethics in game journalists, was immediately reframed by the mainstream media as a harassment campaign. Journalists closed ranks and attacked gamers instead of addressing their own industry's corruption. Any dissenting voices were silenced, and those questioning those close relationships between gaming outlets and the developers were labelled as bigots. Fast forward to today, the only rot has deepened. Many of the same game journalists who smear Gamergate are still working in the industry, and their priorities haven't changed. They're still prioritising activism over reporting, pushing ideology narratives while mocking and dismissing their audience. Gamergate 2, the gaming press has a meltdown again. The gaming press faced renewed criticisms or scrutiny with the rise of Gamergate 2, which reignited the discussion about bias and corruption. The gaming industry is now filled with narrative consultants like Sweet Baby Inc., pushing political messages while journalists cheer them on. So, were you aware of Gamergate? Or do you know what Gamergate is?
No.
Right. So, Gamergate was basically what it was that there were some very, very close relationships between games journalists and games studios. For example, there were allegations, and I have to use the word allegations because we can't prove it. There were allegations that some of the games journalists, like, for example, what was her name? The one that was sitting next to Anita Sarkeesian at the WHO that time, Zoe Quinn. There was allegations that Zoe Quinn was literally sleeping with heads of studios in order to put out favourable reviews.
Oh.
So when I mean there was a close relationship, I mean like sometimes it was so wafer thin there wasn't even a bedsheet between them. But yeah, and guys that were in the games media were offered like things like holidays and trips and stuff like that. At the end of the day, might want to ask why Zoe Quinn was accused of having to sell her body in order to, get laid, but still, difference. But what I was going to say was at the end of the day, you fast forward now and you have a look at what we have is that you have people in the games industry who will give out favourable reviews for video games because they're worried that their access is going to be lost the next time a big game drops.
Yeah, that doesn't really sound very good, actually.
No, like you look at like all the people that claim that Star Wars was the new thing and how fantastic the new Star Wars was going to be. All these people that shield for Star Wars. All these people that shield for example, for the Vanguard, Dragon Age, the Vanguard, right? And it's like, well, like, the reason why they did this sort of stuff was so that next time that Ubisoft puts out a game, they'll be able to go through and get these they'll get review copies. Like I've just done a quick search here for Dragon Age the Vanguard, and like people that just sort of like if I put reviews, right, like all these people here that sort of gave a favourable review, like Skill Up was one that was invited to their presentation, but he bagged it. I do not recommend it. But a lot of these others that did go to this presentation, like, what was Grammar Jinx saying about it?
And we're back with another episode of Before You Buy, that show where we give you some straight up gameplay, and our first like button helps us out.
There's this sort of review on
So that's a matter of taste and personal preference. I really can't quite pin down how Dragon Age fans are going to feel about this one, because as much as I love BioWare, Dragon Age was never really my top franchise. I was more of a KOTOR Jade Empire guy. So far, I'm putting this in the okay category,
But here he is here, claiming that Dragon Age the Vanguard is okay. Now, this is a copy of a game that sold less than 1.5 million copies. And by the way, I'm not taking a shot at Gamer Rants here. He's probably one of the more honest ones when it comes to it, right? But like you go through and you look at some of the more favourable sort of reviews of Dragon Age. Some of the guys that are sort of like really favourable when it comes to it, and you'll always find out that, well, these are the ones that were invited to the presentation. These were the ones that were given these review copies. These ones even for example here, like the Ackman bagging on it, right? They weren't given review copies. The ones that were the ones that were very favourable. And this is, by the way, you also you go through and you do Star Wars. Star Wars Outlaws review. And, you've got some of the decent review and decent reviews of it. Like, for example, like Star Wars Theory and stuff. But he wasn't given a review copy. You go through and you start looking at some of these more favourable ones on it. One of these more favourable reviews. And, like, they were the ones that were invited to the presentation. They were the ones that were invited to the advanced screening and stuff like that. I'll try and find someone that's like really guilty of it. No one's coming off hand. I don't really hang around the Star Wars circle, and I'm not sure who would be a really good example of it without doing some research. The easiest way actually probably would be to go through and do Star Wars Outlaws and review. So, like, here's a journalist.
And the stealth gameplay, as such, the blaster battles felt like they had meaningful stakes, and the stealth gameplay had a bit of weight to it because I knew that I'd be up against it. As such,
Right, this is a game journalist talking about Star Wars.
He wouldn't, but he told me you could
Like, the people that are, like, honest with it are the ones that aren't in the games journalists, that weren't invited to these previous, like, these massive, great big events. Yeah. But, like I say, the games industry has always had a bit of a credibility history. But this is where you're sort of getting, like, Elon Musk turning around, calling them out, saying that video games journalism is garbage. And it's like, well, he's not wrong. And then, of course, their meltdown over it was very telling. So at the end of the day, I'm not surprised. But I don't know. What are your thoughts on the video game journalism? Do you reckon?
I think video game journalism died a long time ago, back when Game Informer was still a thing.
Well, Game Informant I believe, was one of the ones that was also caught up in Gamergate.
I mean, I don't know. I mean,
to be honest, all of game journalists were pretty much caught in it. This was a wide industry-wide thing that was happening, and it was basically a well-known secret. I was watching a guy on YouTube the other day who went through and actually put out a video, and we could actually probably
We're almost
here it is in 7 minutes, him explaining Gamergate.
3 years away from the beginning of Gamergate, and yet it is still constantly misunderstood by the normies. So here's a short and simple metaphor explaining Gamergate. Imagine a banquet hall with 100 tables that represents all gamers. And don't worry, there's not going to be any math here. Our tale begins as most do, with a boy and a girl.
Terrible breakups.
So the boy goes and writes an angry breakup blog post, accusing the girl of all sorts of juicy, terrible things. Did she do any of these terrible things? Who cares? It's not important.
Now, it's interesting that Stitch says that, because that was the crux. It was all about Zoe Quinn allegedly sleeping with all these game industry types. apparently she was getting passed around like a sort of salami sandwich. But,
That's not what Gamergate is about.
It is actually.
This juicy
It was very much about that. It was about the games industry, and this is where I disagree with Sitch. This is where the games industry was basically been accused of sexual favours or monetary favours in exchange for positive reviews.
blog post spreads to various internet forums and communities, represented in our banquet hall as one table. Yes, only a tiny, tiny, tiny amount of the entire population of gamers were even remotely aware of this juicy gossip. But it was juicy gossip, so it was talked about vehemently at this one table. Harsh words were thrown, lots of,
Oh my god, did you hear what Becky did? What a slut. Totally.
because this is the nature of juicy gossip. It has nothing to do with sex or gender or race or whatever. Juicy gossip is drama, and people love them some drama, but still, one table. However, it turns out the girl at the center of this drama was sitting at the next table over, and that was the table filled with indie game developers, game journalists, and people who run gaming websites.
So, notice the icon here?
Yeah.
And it just so happens that the girl was friends with many of these people. So the girl, not wanting to be the center of this new drama, complains to her table, and they nod and say,
Oh, that's so terrible and horrible. How can they do this to you?
Then they turn and stare angrily at the one table discussing the drama. But there is a problem. The table with all the gaming journalists is a corner table against a wall, so they've lost sight of the entire room. All they can see is this one table out of 100, and here they make the classic fuck up. They assume all the other tables are talking about the drama as well. Pro tip, they weren't. And on top of that, there's always that one guy in every group that takes things too far. So our table of game journals gets angrier and angrier. How can all these people believe such terrible slanderous lies about their dear friend? And as the table whips itself into a frenzy of self-righteous anger, they decide to do something very, very stupid. The table rises as one, walks on stage, stops the music, the room goes silent, and they say,
Everyone in this room is a horrible, sexist, misogynist, loser, scumbag. How could this happen?
And this is what started Gamergate. It wasn't the girl and the boys breakup. It wasn't the gossip about the girl and the boys breakup. It was this. It was the gaming journalist's reaction to the gossip of the girl and the boys breakup. So what happened next? The majority of the people in the room said, "Who the fuck are these assholes?" and went back to playing video games. The next largest group of people stood up and said, "Who the fuck are you to call me sexist?" I didn't even know about this stupid breakup drama until you told me about it now. The remaining group of people, the smallest, but housing a large amount of gaming media figures, panicked.
Notice the games media brand right here?
Because, oh no, we're not sexist. So they bent over backwards and tied themselves into knots, trying to prove to the table of gaming journalists that they were not sexist. So why exactly did Gamergate...
So, that's Stitch's take on it. Now, I disagree with some of that. But, at the end of the day, this is what I'm saying is this is all arose from reports of, like, Zoe Quinn and alike going through and supposedly having sexual relations with allegedly sexual relations with these game studios in order to write favourable reviews. And it was all sort of, once her and her boyfriend broke up, it was sort of all put out there, and as I said, the games media sort of saw these very, very select few people talking about it, figured it was a well-known industry secret, and then sort of claimed to attack every gamer because of it. And that's when the rest of the gaming industry turned around and said, well, hang on, what the hell are you talking about? We don't even need to know. So, getting back to his original tweet, when he says video games journalism is garbage, yeah, he's right. But, like I said, Kotaku and people like that kind of had a meltdown. And, you know, they kind of lost their collective over this. So we'll bring up some of their responses. Right, so here we're actually in the post engagements. To find it out, guys, just to show you, click here and go view post engagements. We got one guy saying to F off idiot. And what do you know? He's the official Twitter of Did You Know Gaming, Sinon, MTV, Game Informer, Nerdist, and IGN. So, Games Media. Blah, 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 blah. It's funny because one of the YouTubers always wanted Trump to say Gamergate. So I'm just trying to find the mainstream media. Because it's a lot of the independent people are, by the way, going through and backing up this statement. There's a lot of this, like if it wasn't for independent creators, I wouldn't know anything about video games.
I wouldn't know.
You know, people saying like, you know, so true, he ain't wrong, you know.
But is he wrong?
No, that's the thing. I don't think he is, actually, to be honest. But yeah, like I said, it was mainstream media did not have a very favourable take when it comes to Elon Musk going through and claiming this sort of stuff. But and to back this up, we can actually bring up a poll that was done by a indie studio just recently. Let me see quickly if I can find it. I'm trying to find it because I'm blanking on his name. It's the guy that did the. Just pause for a sec. So, guys, here it is. Here it's this market. He's the guy that does Lords of Fallen. Where will you check for first news of an upcoming game aside from X? Trusted YouTube channels have 43% of the vote. Trusted Games Media has only 11%. Developers social media has 14%. Online communities and friends are 30%. So if you add online communities and friends and trusted YouTube channels, that is over 73, almost 74% of the votes. Like, your trusted games media is sitting here at literally 11% of the vote. Like, you know, at the end of the day, like, this is where, like, people like Elon are turning around and saying, like, you know, like, yeah, like, it's which of the following do you trust most for gaming news? Traditional media, 11%. Influencers, 11%. Friends and communities, 34%. None of the above, 42%. Now, I don't know what they mean by none of the above. I would have selected friends if that option exists, but communities are often a dense group of typical friends, and I'm wrong. Friends and communities and influencers, but they have to be specific ones, like Reddit is a community, but that's the largest of least trustworthy. Same with influencers. Most streamers and YouTube hacks are shills. Sophisticated. Sorry, go back. I trust X, YouTube, and new websites. That Park Place Smash JT banning into comics. I used to get Game Informer magazines mailed out to me. IGN was the next best source. But he's saying I used to, by the way. Influencers, I go to Geeks and Gamers, Niche Gamer, and Fandom Pulse. But no one here is like mentioning like Kotaku or IGN anymore. Like, and you know, like this is like a game studio. Like he has a pretty big reach. Like this was seen by. This had over 21,000 votes. It had over 500,000 views. You know, like if you go through and you look at like this one here, it's still got 15 hours left, right? I've clicked on YouTube and that, but it's had 13,000 votes. It's had over almost 1 million views. It's over 750,000 views. So at the end of the day, like, yeah, I'm saying that, you know, Elon's pretty much right when he says the games media is dead. People are just sick of hearing about like games media. Like they're 11% on this one, and on this one down here, traditional media is 11%. You know, like, you're constantly getting 11% of the votes, guys. Like, you might have a bit of a problem here. But, well, I don't know. Where do you go, Fritz, for your gaming news, besides me?
Reddit and YouTube.
Yeah. Do you read IGN or any of these sort of major industry gaming media magazines anymore?
I mean, like, I get information from them off of YouTube, though, so...
True, yeah. There's no real magazines getting published these days anymore like they used to.
No.
And like I used to go through it and literally get the IGN pushed out to me. I used to love reading their magazines, but you know. But yeah, Musk is calling out game journalists inside this turning when the influential figures clearly gamers. The gaming press needs gamers for far more than gamers need them. But you know, like you look at like the Assassin's Creed coverage, and you look at like, you know, like the coverage of that. You know, like Shadows has a very favourable review when it comes to Game Informant and Kotaku and these sort of places. Yet the YouTube communities are literally shitting on it. So like, you know, yeah. But anyway, anything else you want to add before we jump off to the next topic?
No.
No. Guys, as a 50,000 foot overview to answer this, yeah, I reckon Elon's right. I reckon games media sucks. But, you know, at the end of the day, you know, people are entitled to their own opinion, and if you like the games media, then you do you. And, yeah. Apart from that, have a great night. Enjoy yourself, everybody.